Hello, good friends. Good to see you this Friday morning, and welcome to our weekly Reporters Roundtable here on the Bill Press Pod. Well, all quiet on the congressional front this week after passage of the big, beautiful bill, but there was still lots of news from the nation's capital after yet another call with his once best friend forever, Donald Trump, said he was pissed off now at Vladimir Putin. The president said he was also open to slapping new sanctions on Russia and again vowed to slap new tariffs on over 24 countries. Meanwhile, a conservative Republican judge ruled that Trump's order to end birthright citizenship is unconstitutional, while the Supreme Court said that for now, Donald Trump is free to fire however many federal employees he wants. And North Carolina's Tom Tillis, having decided to quit the Senate rather than vote for the big, beautiful bill, is using his freedom to speak out against the Trump administration, starting with Pete Hegseth. And President Trump heads to Texas today amid questions about proposed new cuts to weather forecasting centers and FEMA. A lot going on. What's it all add up to? Let's check in with today's panel. Philip Bump, columnist for the Washington Post and author of How to Read This Chart newsletter. Hello, Philip. Welcome back.
Hello, sir. Thank you.
Allan Smith joining us again from NBC News, political reporter. Hello, Allan. Good to see you.
Bill, always good to hear from you, too.
Thank you. And Jeffrey Earle, deputy U.S. political editor and head of the Washington Bureau for the Daily Mail. Hello, Geoff.
Hello, Bill.
So, Philip, the president heading off to Texas today. This is we see this for every president, this role of kind of consoler in chief, if you will. But this particular visit raises questions maybe about the president's plans to cut NOAA, to cut weather forecasting, to cut FEMA.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw Donald Trump come into office and, with Elon Musk at his hip, pledging to rip apart the federal government and dump all these woke and unnecessary and costly and wasteful government employees and so on and so forth. And now we are seeing the first major disaster, I think it's safe to say, the California wildfires before that, in which this has been the regime. And so not only is it on his watch, it is on his watch after he has repudiated and been responsible for the firing of a lot of people. And so, I think that the jury is still justifiably out on the extent to which things could have been ameliorated had there not been these firings. I don't think we can say at this point that it's, that this all, the death toll, for example, lays at Donald Trump's feet.
Yeah.
But he faces these questions, right? And, Kristi Noem, this new reporting from CNN about the fact that because of policies that she'd instituted, the response may have been delayed. Like, these are all valid questions under any administration. But here we have Donald Trump, who came in pledging to, rip out core essential functions of the government, which of course he didn't present that way, and now a disaster that one can reasonably wonder may have been related to that.
So, Geoff, what's the White House saying? Are they sticking to their guns about all this waste and fraud in NOAA and or National Weather Service?
That was certainly the initial instinct when Caroline Leavitt came out the first on Monday, her first briefing after that. She really hammered critics or anybody who wanted to ask questions about whether the Weather Service and NOAA were at fault. And the administration really showed no interest in any kind of a probe, an investigation. Hey, let's see. Perhaps we want to know whether this contributed. And that's certainly that's how Schumer tried to play it, demanding an IG probe. So they have definitely softened their language through blind quotes in recent days, and a signal from Noam that, oh, we're not focused on abolishing FEMA right now, and this is showing how our current policy works. But it really illustrates why previous presidents haven't come out calling to abolish FEMA, because it was a pretty well functioning agency, which helped people in exactly these kind of situations.
Right. So, Allan, I haven't kept a scorecard, but if you think about tornado damage, hurricane damage, flash floods, I think of states like, you know, North Carolina and Kentucky and go to Missouri and go down the list of red states, right? I mean, where FEMA people count on FEMA being on the scene. Isn't isn't this at least politically risky?
So, I mean, Bill, I think you're bringing up a great point here. I mean, first off, flood deaths are on the rise. The 10-year average has now grown beyond the 30-year average. It's one of the only natural disasters that the number of deaths is actually on the rise. So this is something that administrations are going to be dealing at an increased rate here going forward. But look, because of what the president and Elon did with Doge, anytime now there's a natural disaster, and look, it's still way too soon with Texas to draw any cause and effect. Like, let's figure out what the facts are. It's going to take more time. But now, anytime there's a natural disaster, they're going to be facing questions about these cuts to science and research grants, anything to do with FEMA. And that's really because of high profile Doge was. And just because you brought up North Carolina, I would note late in the 2024 campaign, what was such a huge issue?
Right.
Donald Trump making a lot of promises about what his administration was going to do to clean up in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. And I think the end result of his administration's work there, that's still to be determined. That campaign promise has not been fully met yet. So these are issues that are going to keep coming up in the administration. And just because of Doge, they're going to be facing these questions time and time again.
Right. I think I mentioned this before on an earlier roundtable, but some 20 years ago, in Marin County, California, Carol and I were in the middle of a huge landslide, natural disaster, and I remember at the time we were totally cut off. All the roads were cut off, and FEMA came riding to the rescue, and people were just excited when FEMA showed up because this was the help that people needed to to get back on our feet again in that area. So it's certainly uh, I think very important work for the federal government and politically risky for anybody to suggest that the states can handle it without any federal help. Just throwing in my little experience and editorial comment there. So it's a little early in the morning for a taco, Geoff, but I have to ask you, you're at the White House. Are tariffs on or off? And how do we know?
Well, I suppose we could look at the markets, who seems not entirely sure that they're on, but they sure look to me like they are. I mean, Trump has been rolling out these amazingly worded letters to various countries. The talk has now turned to letters from deals, and just sort of decreeing what tariff each country will pay in flowery congratulatory language. But I think it's pretty clear that it illustrates they haven't been able to negotiate 90 deals with each country. And Trump also signed an order delaying the July 9th deadline to August. With that, smells to me a little bit like another Taco Tuesday event. But the people who make the big bucks will be the final arbiters, I guess.
So, Allan, as Geoff indicated, this 90 days, that was Pete Navarro's, the president's advisor on tariffs, what he promised, right? 90 days ago, July 9 came and went, and we basically, I think, had one deal, not 90. But just for the record, here's Peter Navarro.
90 deals in 90 days is possible. The boss is going to be the chief negotiator. Nothing's done without him looking very carefully at it. He has such a fine attention to details.
Well, it turned out, Allan, not to be possible after all. How possible it is we're going to have 90 by 1st of August.
So July 9th, which obviously came this week, came and went. It was already the tariffs were initially delayed to July 9th. And
That's
now
right.
we get there. Now they're delayed to August 1st.
Right. That's
And,
right.
there've only been a couple of trade deals that have been done so far. Of the 90 they were shooting for, I believe it's only 2 or 3, right? So, when you delay this multiple times now, the markets are going to be taking you less seriously. But I think even more importantly than that, these other countries that they need to be coming to the table, they see these deadlines get pushed back not once but twice. Where's the impetus on them to rush to make a deal? If they have the sense, if the deadline comes up and no deal is there, it might get pushed back again.
Yeah. So, Philip, one story I saw this week raised, I thought, an important question, which is what is a deal and who decides
Sure.
what is a deal? And right now, it seems like Donald Trump's the only one who decides
Sure.
it's a deal or it's not, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, it's like when Donald Trump was once asked before he was president what his net worth was, and he said it was basically whatever he felt like on any given day, right? That's his approach to deal making. If he feels like he can score some sort of victory with his base by saying he's got a deal with the UK or with Vietnam or whoever it is, he's just going to say that, right? There's nothing inked, there's nothing on paper. It is not the product of months and months of negotiation by administrators behind the scenes for both countries hammering out some sort of agreement. It is Donald Trump being like, okay, we got to deal with the UK now, and here's what it looks like, and rushing to Fox News to talk about it. It's all absolutely loosey goosey. It's detached from reality, and it is what we've come to expect.
Right. So I guess it's going to continue to be the whiplash and the seesaw for what, until August 1st, at which time it may be delayed until December 25th. Who knows, right? We'll follow the tariff issue as we go along. The president assembled his cabinet this week, and right in shortly after he had finished, I think, a 2-hour phone call with Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin, reporters asked the president what he got out of that call, and here's the president expressing, needless to say, a little displeasure at Vladimir Putin.
We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Allan, this is a guy who is going to help Donald Trump end the war in Ukraine on day one. Hasn't worked out, huh?
No, and I think it's quite interesting that Trump right now is getting publicly frustrated with Putin. And look, it's also happening at a time where the president. I think there's a lot of folks who would say he's had a good recent trip to NATO, and they've accomplished some of his goals there. After bombing the Iranian nuclear facilities. I know that's still going to be one where we got to wait and see what happens next. But so far, no truly bad outcomes for the United States. And Russia, Ukraine, right now is the one foreign policy space, outside of obviously what we were just talking about with tariffs, where he does not seem to be making any progress right now. And I think the fact that he sees Putin and not Zelensky anymore as the impediment to any progress there is really quite notable.
Right. And Philip, in right after this call, right, Vladimir Putin unleashed I think the most seriously damaging, the worst and the biggest aerial bombing attacks against Ukraine of the entire duration of the war. So, I mean, clearly, ceasefire is not something he's thinking
Right.
about.
Right. Yeah, and it hasn't been for a long time. I mean, it's just sort of remarkable to watch Donald Trump come to the realization that the rest of the world came to in 2014. That hey, maybe this Putin guy can't be taken at face value,
Yeah.
right? Like, he really wanted to, and he really thought that he had this special connection with Putin. I mean, George W. Bush's comment about seeing into his soul has sort of been lost to the ages by the extent to which Donald Trump has fallen under Putin's sway. But very clearly, this was never going to be resolvable within 24 hours. I think at the time when Donald Trump was saying that, we assumed it was probably hyperbolic, but that he really thought that he had some special magic that he could apply here. And he's coming to the realization that he doesn't. He's getting mad about it, right? And so now he's sort of in this difficult place where he's trying to figure out, like, well, how can I get weapons to Ukraine without making my MAGA base mad, who I had helped make bad by insisting that
Yeah.
this conflict was not going the way that America wanted it to. And so he made his bed, right? This is there are 45,000 beds in the White House, all of which he has made. Now he's trying to decide which one he's going to sleep in. That was
Uh,
a weird analogy, but I think
A
the point
little.
came across.
but we got it. We understood it. So, Geoff, I hate to pick on you as the taco man, but this is another case, isn't it? Where last week, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, said, we're gonna stop sending these defensive weapons to Ukraine. And then a week later, the president says, nope, we're going to start sending them again. And I didn't know anything about what Hegseth had done.
Yeah, and that we'll have to decide. I don't know exactly what to make of the way Trump phrased it when he was asked about that by Caitlin Collins. He said to her, he was asked who made the decision, and he said, I don't know, you tell me. And that it could be that he doesn't know, but I think he might be being a little coy, and sort of maybe that also reflects his frustration with how Hegseth is handling the situation. And I don't want to clutch pearls over him using a bad word in the White House, but I do think it really underlines how much his language has changed over time. Like normally when he talks about Putin, he's just going out of his way really to compliment him and talk about how they get along. He always finds a way to say something okay about him. And when he talks about the war, it's always just about how bloody it is and how there's so many deaths and all the destruction. He really doesn't want to talk about the viciousness of the attacks, right? And so something might actually be changing, or maybe performatively, but something is going on to have him do that kind of a U-turn.
Right. Yeah. No, the history of his positive comments about Putin, right? You could write books about,
Yeah.
and certainly haven't heard that lately. Well, there's a lot more going on in the news, which we want to get to, and will with today's panel. Philip Bump from the Washington Post, Geoff Earle from the Daily Mail, and Allan Smith from NBC News. After we take a quick break here on the Bill Press Pod, then we'll be back and pick up on the rest of the news of the week. Hold on, we'll be right back. And today's Reporters Roundtable on the Bill Press Pod is brought to you by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, 1.2 million members strong, the good men and women of the UFCW, under their new president, Milton Jones. These are the workers and union members that most of us meet daily in our lives, the ones who help us in our great retail stores like Macy's and Nordstrom's, in our big grocery chains like Safeway and Stop and Shop, our chemical plants, meat and poultry processing plants, all the workers of the UFCW. So we salute them for their great work on behalf of all of us, the services they provide every day, and thank them for the longtime support of progressive broadcasting. You can find out more about the UFCW by checking out their website at ufcw.org. We're back on today's Reporters Roundtable here on the Bill Press Pod. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's say hello again to Allan Smith from NBC News, Geoff Earle from the Daily Mail, and Philip Bump from the Washington Post. Well, Allan, Tom Tillis, alone among Republican senators, not the only one to vote against the BBB, but the only one to say, look, I'd rather not run for re-election than have to cave into Donald Trump and vote for this bill. He now seems like a free man who's willing to just express himself on almost anything going on, including in an interview with CNN, his comments about whether he thinks Pete Hegseth is up to the job of Secretary of Defense and should have that job in the first place. Here's Senator Tillis.
With the passing of time, I think it's clear he's out of his depth as a manager of a large, complex organization. I mean, this whole idea of having a pause in Ukraine defensive arms, that's just amateurish. But today, I am beginning to wonder if maybe Armed Services was a little bit generous with respect to their assessment of his capabilities as a manager of the world's largest, most complex, and arguably consequential organization.
Politely said, Allan. He's not up to the job, is what he's saying, right? But this is a side of Tillis we haven't really seen.
I mean, if you go back to the Hegseth confirmation vote, really right up until the last minute, it was up in the air as to whether Republicans were going to be able to get him across the finish line. They thought they had Tillis's vote. They actually didn't. And then really at the 11th hour, they were able to bring him across the finish line. And the interesting thing is they were probably able to bring him across the finish line because he thought or was feeling that he was going to run for re-election in what is, a Republican leaning swing state, right? And now that he's not, he's saying, well, you know what, I really regret voting for Hegseth. I shouldn't have done it in the first place, which gives you so much insight into how so many of these votes go. But I just, I caught this week, there was a New York Times op-ed from Senator Jeff Flake, the former Republican from Arizona, who had very much played the role that Tillis has played this week for his last couple of years in the Senate after Donald Trump won in 2016. And the op-ed was titled, it was something along the lines of, the Republican fever must break. And, there have been people who've been saying that for the better part of a decade now. It hasn't. it probably is not going to. But it does seem like, especially in the U.S. Senate, there will always be one or two people who take the path Tillis is taking. Often they're not going to be running for re-election, but it seems like there has been these one or two voices of stronger dissent at any given time. So I'm curious to see, once Tillis is gone, right, who steps up and joins the Susan Collinses or the Lisa Murkowskis.
I'm glad you mentioned Lisa Murkowski, Philip, because it seems to me if Tom Tillis is an indicator that the fever might be breaking, Lisa Murkowski's lame excuse for voting for the BBB maybe is an indicator that the fever's not breaking. I mean,
Right.
so is Tillis going to bring more people with him?
Well, I mean, we just heard him mentioning Jeff Flake, right? And did Jeff Flake bring anyone with him? No, he didn't. Right?
No.
And this is
Right.
we've seen this party before. Murkowski, I think, is really fascinating because she was very vocal, well, not very vocal, but she made comments, unusual comments earlier this year about the
Yeah.
extent to which legislators worry about actual physical threats to their safety in this new era, which I think we're all cognizant of, but deserves more attention. So she has recognized the extent to which she is part of this mechanism that is not working particularly well. And then she became the face of this person who was willing to sort of slow down discussions on the bill. And then she said she's voting for it, but hoping it would come back for reconciliation, right? I mean, it was this very strange sort of approach given her apparent recognition of the state of American politics at the moment,
Yeah.
that this is unlikely. I have no sympathy for I don't feel bad that she's in this position since she put herself in this position. But you're right, like this is a good indication that even if she, an independent minded senator who spoke out about the administration approach and Trumpian politics, even if she's going to roll over on stuff like this, on what no one wants to be the face of the defeat of this legislation, totally understandably. But if she's not willing to do that, then like under what circumstances is someone like Murkowski going to be willing to take a stand? And I don't know what those circumstances might be.
Yeah. Geoff, the other Allan mentioned, the all the tension, if you will, of getting Hegseth across the finish line. The other one that I recall was getting RFK Jr. across the finish line, where Bill Cassidy, right, was the one everybody
Yes.
expected. Nobody, he could never vote for Kennedy, and yet he ended up supporting him. What are the chances Cassidy might follow Tillis's lead and say, "Oh, I made a big mistake. I shouldn't have done that"?
Well, yeah, Cassidy's another guy who feels these real tensions, and he represents a very red state, but we know that some of his instincts are not to go along. And what I find so mind-boggling about all this is, particularly in a confirmation, this is an area, you're a senator, you actually have a lot of power. There's a long, hundreds of year tradition of you getting to influence who these people are. So be smart about it, wherever you're coming from. Band together or call up the White House and be mad. Why Trump is always beating up on you. Maybe someone should have the self-respect to beat up on him and say, I'm an Armed Services Committee member. I'm up for re-election. You need to call me on who the nominee is. But no, or whatever the example is. But these guys they are so, for some good reason, terrified of what could be brought to them, that they're not exercising their authority and honestly being the kind of person that Trump might respect.
If he stood up to them, you mean?
Yeah, and look,
Yeah.
he's not beating up on Susan Collins, right? So someone needs to be a mocker and make something happen, but it doesn't happen very often.
Right. So the one thing we can say about President Trump is he does make himself available to reporters. Maybe too often he makes himself available to reporters, willing to take questions almost anywhere on almost any topic, except we learned this week one big topic. Donald Trump at his cabinet meeting asked about a certain person that he used to hang out with. But Donald Trump did not want to talk about him. Here he is.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas.
Allan, this Jeffrey Epstein case the missing files just doesn't seem to go away. Why?
Well, for one reason, and Trump himself, was not really out in front of this, during the campaign, promising, we're going to be releasing all of this new information about Jeffrey Epstein. But there are people in his administration, like Kash Patel, who were out there promising to be releasing all of this info.
And Pam Bondi, right?
And Pam Bondi during the administration, right? They were getting way in over their skis, and they put themselves in a position where they were either going to have to produce the goods very quickly or essentially admit defeat and that they were wrong. And there's a lot of people in Trump's base who were super excited for this. They wanted this stuff to come out, and they're very disappointed right now. They're voicing their displeasure. But it's very, very funny to hear how the president talks about Jeffrey Epstein, because, if you go back, 10, 15 years, there's essentially two conspiracies that the president is, contemptful of or shuts down more, right? He has an open mind to consider almost any conspiracy except, are aliens real and Jeffrey Epstein. And those are the two that he's like, why is anyone even interested in this? And of course, because of their own personal relationship, it is interesting that the Epstein conspiracy is one of the two.
So, Philip, I don't understand. What is the MAGA obsession with this? If Donald Trump was a friend of Epstein's, and if, according to as Elon Musk says, he's in the files, why does MAGA want the files released in the first place? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, I think, it's important to remember that the core of MAGAism is certainly Donald Trump, but really more fundamentally that something is broken in the system and the system's out to get regular people, right? That is what Donald Trump leveraged. Donald Trump didn't invent that. Donald Trump piggybacked that, became the face of that movement, right?
Yeah.
And so, this is the animating idea that, there's these elites, they are hiding something, they're up to no good. And even Donald Trump isn't immune to that, as we see here. I mean, I still think he's going to weather this fairly effectively, but he's not immune to it, and he doesn't make things better. But he brought with him all these conspiracy theorists who he didn't have the first time around. He brought with him the people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and so on and so forth. And when I was writing about the overlap between political violence and conspiracy theories back in the first Trump administration, I spoke with someone who pointed out that usually it's not people in positions of power who are the ones advancing conspiracy theories, because once you're in a position of power, you have the ability to rebut conspiracy theories, right? You can't be, it's hard to maintain that illusion if you have the ability to settle the issue once and for all. And so what the administration has found is, by bringing in all these people who have advanced these conspiracy theories, now it's in that unhappy position of being like, well, okay, what do the books say? And the books, of course, say, well, the conspiracy theories are full of nonsense. And the conspiracy theorists, all they do, as is always the case with conspiracy theorists, is they wrap that into the conspiracy theory. And so here we are.
Right. Geoff, in a sense, this is a problem of the White House's own making, right? Or the administration's. When Pam Bondi says, I've got the files right on my desk, right? They're sitting on my desk.
Absolutely. It really set it up for this. And, building on Allan's point about sort of the richness of Trump giving that particular lecture at that particular time. First of all, it was a New York Post reporter who asked that question, and it was timely, right? This stuff had just come out.
Yeah.
Trump knew that his base was seething. And then also what I like is that he made it so so inappropriate to be talking about this after the truly horrific tragedy in Texas. But Trump, he had opened that event venting about Russia, and bringing up all kinds of like weird stuff that also had no business being brought up after Texas. So it spoke to his sensitivity about it, and he knows that people are mad about it.
Yeah. You mean stuff like the new decor of the cabinet room?
Exactly. Which sends its own messages, right?
Indeed. Okay. Well, finally, I think that all Americans are feeling better these days, because we know that going forward in any election, we are finally going to have more than two choices. We're not just going to be stuck with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. We're going to have candidates from the American Party, created and founded by Elon Musk himself. What are the chances of a third party, Philip Bump, under Elon Musk?
Well,
Zero?
Bill. I mean, look, yeah, I mean, I hate the term third party because there's literally dozens, scores of existing parties. The
There are,
problem
right.
is that none of those existing parties have done the job that a political party is supposed to do, which is to build power in an institution of a political party, right? They exist as larks and one-offs and appealing to specific fringe issues. And it's a way for people to sort of mark their identity rather than to actually build political power, which is the point of a political party. And the Democrats and Republicans have been extremely good at building institutional power in their parties to the extent that they're able to lock out a lot of these other parties.
Right.
So the question when you look at Elon Musk is, can he potentially influence some specific elections and have people win if they're running on like a joint Republican / America party? Potentially, sure. I mean, his track record in Wisconsin doesn't suggest that he has a lot of ability to sway elections, but maybe. Is he actually going to build a political party to which people are going to donate and volunteer their time and then build a big consensus where there's candidates running on it? No, he's not. I'm going to say that. I'm going to make that prediction now. It's not going to happen. The most successful third party effort we've seen probably in the past 30 years or so was the Reform Party, started by another billionaire from Texas, H. Ross Perot.
Right.
Perot had already been a successful presidential candidate, getting a ton of third-party votes. He formed the Reform Party in 1995. 1996, he's on the ballot again, doesn't do as well. And where's the Reform Party today, right? It basically fizzled out after 2000. And that's a best-case scenario for what happens with Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the difference between Elon Musk and Ross Perot is popular, and people voted for him, liked him. Elon Musk, people don't like in the first place. So, no, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah. So, Allan, I mean, as Philip points out, this takes an awful lot of work and getting on the ballot is a different challenge in every one of the 50 states, right?
I mean, if you recall during the last campaign, Elon was doing his giveaways, one person who signs this petition is going to win $1 million. I mean, maybe that's going to be the strategy for ballot access, but the amount of signatures they are going to have to get on the ballot in all 50 states is a monumental task. They're going to need so many volunteers to go and do that. And then the other thing, and people always think about starting a new political party or a third party, they're thinking about influencing the presidency. But what you need to do to build political power is you need to have candidates of your party running in state houses across the country, running in races up and down the ballot, and slowly building up, your presence in the broader political sphere. No one in our lifetime has really been able to do that successfully, like to any extent.
Yeah.
And, Elon, as Philip pointed out, right, he's starting this party with his poll numbers having already been in the tank with Democrats and with independents before he decided to go completely scorched earth with Donald Trump. I cannot imagine, just because of how Elon has been viewed, particularly by Dems, that they're going to be coming around to him now that he has gone nuclear on the president. What is more likely is that his poll numbers are probably going to get even softer. That's just not a great position to be in, to be the face of a new political party.
Right. I guess, Geoff, for Democrats, they see Elon Musk, they might want to actually encourage him, not because he'll get that many Democratic votes, but he'd get that many Republican votes, maybe some MAGA votes away from Donald Trump or MAGA candidates.
Yeah, and there's some polling that I think is worth thinking about, in particular looking at, well, where is he strongest, and that seems to be with younger men or men in their 30s, and if that could hit Trump in an area where he had seen a lot of growth last time. So I mean, I guess some of the big issues to think about are, what is his motivation? If this is driven by the feud with Trump, will he still be that spitting mad to be pouring money into this effort a couple years down the road? I kind of think, from when I view him from outside, that he will move on by then. But if not, could this have an impact in 2026? And could it tip? Yeah, for all the reasons stated, I don't think this is going to be the new political party to reshape the era. But will it tip 4 or 3 House seats in what could be a tight race for redistricting and other reasons?
Yeah. No, and I just want to add that as someone who's long advocated a third party, I think as Americans we deserve more choices than we have. But let's face it, I believe the system is rigged against a third party, and it just ain't going to happen. not with Elon Musk and not with anybody else. Certainly not with Elon Musk, because he's the least likely to pull this off. At any rate, great roundup of the news of the week. And I'm sure there's some issues that we should have touched on we didn't have time to get to, but we're not going to let you go, panelists, without we always ask you, what's the one story that really struck you this week? Your favorite story of the week of all the things that you read about or covered yourself? Allan, you want to start us off, please?
It's not as if this was a very extensive story. This happened yesterday, but I just thought it was so notable. And it was the president nominating internet troll Nick Adams to be his ambassador to Malaysia. A self-described alpha male influencer, the author of Alpha Kings. He has tweeted dozens and dozens of times about Hooters and how parents should be taking their kids there to help them turn into alpha males. And this is now going to be America's top man in Malaysia. And I'm just so fascinated to see how that story develops if he does end up being confirmed by the Senate. And he is just the latest in a long line of people who have kind of made their brand as these kind of trollish internet figures to be nominated to places or given jobs throughout the Trump administration. So that's a storyline that I'm really going to continue to be following.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see the reaction from Malaysia to this appointment. Be interesting to see if they know who he is or want anything to do with him, for sure. Geoff, what caught your attention?
I want to credit it properly. I think it's Rolling Stone got the ball rolling, but it's this AI-generated band called Velvet Sundown.
Whoa.
They climbed mysteriously to the very high rankings in Spotify. They're totally made up and AI generated. Their picture looks a little like Creedence in the 60s. And they have such sort of like, they have these like weird vaporous songs like Dust on the Wind and an album called Floating on Echoes. And I guess it was some kind of an art project that caught everybody off guard.
Yeah, I saw that. It's just amazing how they could do that. Was Marco Rubio part of that band? No?
Yes, he's singing tenor, and he knows a lot about AI, doesn't he?
He knows a lot. He's learned a lot about AI. Philip Bump, help us out with your favorite story.
I regret to say this will be the second Hooters tangential story, which I was not expecting. When I heard the previous mention Hooters, I was like, what are the odds? But when I wrote my book that came out in 2023, a look at the baby boom generation, I went down to the Villages in Florida, which is this retirement community down there. Fascinating place. They tout it as Disneyland for retirees, which it really is to some extent, just because it's sort of invented, made up community that's rooted in nostalgia for an America that didn't really exist. But story in the New York Post today, now they have a Hooters. They added a Hooters to the Villages, which is this perfect encapsulation of that exact same sort of nostalgia and wish the things used to be differently. And apparently it's doing booming business, as one might expect.
Well, you got to go back, Philip.
I will pass. Thank you, though. I will let the ambassador to Malaysia enjoy his time in the Villages there.
Well, I guess I'm going to join, for my favorite story, join Donald Trump in a little off-color language here, but my favorite story was one I saw in the Washington Post. We're all animal lovers, not all of us, but most Americans are, and more people are going to animal shelters to get their pets, rescue pets. And this story came from a rescue center up in Falls River, Massachusetts, where the volunteers there were just kind of doing their job and everything was a nice, quiet day. And suddenly somebody shouted out, "Shut the fuck up." And everybody kind of turned and said, "Whoa, what's going on?" And then that voice repeated it. And they discovered it was coming from Hendrix. Hendrix was a parrot that somebody had given taken to the animal shelter. And for like about a month, it was very quiet. All it ever said was please or thank you. But then I guess it felt more comfortable and got back into its foul language. They took a video of this, put it up, and offered the pet for adoption. Thousands and thousands of people watched the video. 60 people applied to adopt Hendrix, and Hendrix is now in a new home, which I'm sure is a very colorful place to be because he is he's now that he started with his foul language, he's not bound to shut up. In fact, I saw that parakeets are expected to live some 70 years. So it's going to be a long time from hearing "shut the F up" in whatever house adopted Hendrix. So be careful when you adopt your next pet, and be sure that the language is not language maybe that you don't want your kids to hear.
Foul language indeed.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Philip Bump, thanks so much for joining us from the Washington Post. Allan Smith, great to have you here from NBC News, and Geoff Earle from the Daily Mail. And thank you all, good friends, for listening today. Have a great weekend. We're going to be back on Tuesday with our next edition of the Bill Press Pod. You know, the immigration wars have hit California, and one person right in the middle of it is a United States Senator who was actually tackled to the ground when he dared try to ask a question of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Of course, I'm talking about Senator Alex Padilla. He's going to be our guest on the next edition of the Bill Press Pod on Tuesday. You don't want to miss that. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Tuesday with Senator Alex Padilla.